What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut, and today we are going to be discussing the Max Pacioretty draft pick trade, which occurred back on February 25th, 2007. Now, this was a trade between the San Jose Sharks and the Montreal Canadiens that saw, at least at the time, the big name was defenseman Craig Rivet get traded to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for a first-round pick. Now, essentially, Rivet's contract was set to expire. The Canadiens weren't in position to make a playoff push, so they decided, you know what, let's trade him rather than risk losing the talented defenseman to free agency for nothing. So how'd this trade work out? We're going to start by looking at the San Jose Sharks. Now, the first player they got was, of course, defenseman Craig Rivet. And Rivet played solid defense and okay offense over a half season. Now, he had a solid playoff push for the Sharks, but they did not make the Stanley Cup. Still, he was able to be re-signed, so that's positive. And then he had one of the more productive offensive seasons of his career with 5 goals and a career-high 30 assists in the 07-08 campaign. However, after this 1 year, the Sharks decided to trade him to the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for a couple of draft picks, 2 second-rounders to be precise. The first of which was the 2009 43rd overall pick. With that, the Sharks would pick defenseman William Wren. Now, Wren, he spent most of his time in the organization in the ECHL, but he didn't really produce much there, and then he would leave. Now, they also got a 2010 second-round pick. This would become the 53rd overall pick, and it would be traded to the Carolina Hurricanes in exchange for a fourth and a player. So that fourth-round pick would become the 127th overall, and it would be used to select center Cody Ferrero. And Ferrero, well, he spent a few years in the ECHL before leaving the organization, so not the best. They also got defenseman Nicholas Wallin. And Wallin, he would spend 1.5 years as a decent second-pairing defenseman before he walked from the organization as a whole. Now, the Sharks also got, in the original trade, a 5th-round pick in the 2008 draft. This would become the 146th overall selection. And with that, they would pick defenseman Julian Demers. Now, Demers, he did not even sign with the team. So all said and done, the Sharks took a lot of chances on defensemen in this draft, in this trade, and none of them necessarily panned out, excluding a career year from Rivet. So how did the Montreal Canadiens do? Now, of course, the main player that they got would be picked with the 2007 first-round pick. It would become the 22nd overall, and they would use that to pick Connecticut-born left wing Max Pacioretty. So Pacioretty, he had a quiet first 2 years in the NHL, recording a combined 6 goals and 19 assists over 86 games. Now, in March of 2011, he took a massive hit from defenseman Zdeno Chara. This, of course, would spark some new rules in the league, changed around the stadium a little bit, the rink, and, of course, sparked a little bit more of a rivalry between Montreal and Boston, as if that wasn't already brewing. So, yeah, he suffered a concussion and a fractured C4 vertebrae from this hit, and obviously, the fractured C4 vertebrae ended his season, no questions asked. Now, he broke out once he returned in the 11-12 season, as he would lead the Canadiens in points with 33 goals and 32 assists, which was good for 65 points. He was awarded the Bill Masterton Award, which is given to the person who shows the best perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to the sport of hockey as a whole. Of course, coming off that massive injury, doing that good, he was always going to get it. Now, he had a decent lockout-shortened campaign in the 2012-13 season, but he more stepped up in 2013-14, as he would score 39 goals, which included 11 game winners. He had 37 goals in the 14-15 season, and as a result, he was named captain prior to the 15-16 campaign. He had 30 goals in the 15-16 campaign and followed that up with 35 in 16-17. So he's clearly playing at a high pace at this point, but unfortunately, he did have a rough year in the 17-18 season, as he would only score 17 goals to go with 20 assists. Now, he would be traded to the Vegas Golden Knights, but this trade will be discussed in a future video of its own, so stay tuned for that one. It won't be out for a little bit, but when it is eventually out, it will be linked in the description below. Now, the Canadiens also got one player in this trade. They essentially got a player who would step in and take the place of Craig Rivet in defenseman Josh Georges, and Georges had a minimal impact in his first half season with the Canadiens. However, he had a solid year in the 07-08 campaign as he just kind of stepped it up. And then in 08-09, he had a career-high 4 goals to go with 23 points all said and done. And he had a solid year in the 2009-2010 season before stepping up big time in the playoffs. So he at least helped them make a surprising run to the Eastern Conference Finals that year as the 8th seed. After this, he kind of had an okay season in the 2010-11 campaign, at least offensively speaking. And then 2011-2012 saw him really just step up his defensive game as he would record 250 blocks and 131 hits. He had another pair of solid seasons in 2012-13 and 13-14 before he was traded away himself to the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for a 2016 second-round pick. This would become the 45th overall, and it would be traded away. We will get to this in a future Alex DeBrincat video, which, when it is eventually out, will be linked in the description below. So that covers Montreal and San Jose, the two main teams. How do the secondary teams do? We're going to start with Carolina just because Buffalo's got two parts. So Carolina got the 53rd pick in the 2010 draft, and they would use that to select defenseman Mark Alt. Now, before they even signed Alt, they decided to trade his rights away. We will not be discussing that trade, so next to nothing for Carolina. So now we have the Buffalo Sabres. So the Sabres, like I said, were involved in two separate trades, one with each team. So they got, the first trade we'll look at saw them get defenseman Craig Rivet. And Rivet, he had a pair of okay seasons for the Sabres. However, it was pretty apparent that something was off. He wasn't playing at the high level that he had been in the past. Now, after this, he announced that he had a double labrum tear, which had really slowed down his last 2 years in Buffalo. He had to undergo surgery, and in the 10-11 season, he played a very minor role, only appearing in 23 games before he was essentially waived because it was clear he wasn't going to be the player that he had been in the past. Now, they also got a 2010 7th-round pick in this trade. It would become the 208th pick, and they would use it to select left wing Riley Boychuk. And Boychuk, he spent 4 years in the AHL before leaving the organization. Now, lastly for them, they were also involved giving up a second-round pick for defenseman Josh Georges. Now, Georges for the team, he had a quiet first year, but he did have a good bounce-back year too, which saw him record 140-plus hits and blocks. Now, he had a decent year in the 16-17 season, and he just kind of really regressed and had an iffy year in the 17-18 year. This led to him essentially just not being re-signed, and no one had interest, so he did retire. So this was the, at least, draft pick portion of the Max Pacioretty trade. Like I said, his trade to Vegas will be discussed in a future video, as will the Alex DeBrincat draft pick trade. So this trade is still ongoing for Montreal. Essentially, San Jose, we know what they got. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good rest of your day.